If you're working as a health, fitness, or a wellness professional, you're very likely going to come across clients who are dealing with frequent injuries from either workouts or sports. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, you're just overtraining. And overtraining certainly has the ability to create some troubles, but there has to be a reason that one person would experience more either sports injuries or workout injuries, even if they're not working out as often or as hard as someone else who's not getting any injuries at all. So in this video, I want to help you understand how to look at your client's body chemistry to get an idea of what may be creating these frequent sports or workout injuries. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So remember, I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving anybody medical advice here, but I'm going to put some links in the description below to some of these studies that we're going to go through to help you get an idea of what could be going on with your clients. Because when we're looking at this frequent injury thing, you're going to hear overtraining most of the time, and oh man, your client's doing too much training, and there really are some issues that overtraining can create, but we really need to understand what those issues are to have any clue how we can help these clients. So we need to understand why this overtraining would create problems, and the problems that we really want to look at are structural weaknesses, something going on with some type of connective tissue or tendon or some type of muscle that is not having the strength that it really should. There's weaknesses there, and those weaknesses are going to invite in these frequent injuries and frequent problems. So let's look at this study here that talks about relative energy deficiency in sports, or REDs, and knee injury. And they say the etiology of REDs is low energy availability, or LEA, which is a mismatch between an athlete's energy intake, or their diet, and the energy expended in exercise. This results in inadequate energy to support the body's baseline physiological functions. So we need to understand that a person doesn't just need the amount of energy that they need to do this workout or do this sporting activity. The body needs a lot of resources to run a lot of functions behind the curtains that we don't really know were going on, but these functions still have to happen for the human to be able to survive. So the study goes on to say that these relative energy deficiency is associated with a reduction in anabolic hormones such as insulin and insulin-like growth factor, and an increase in catabolic hormones like cortisol. This has been shown to be detrimental to the repair of post-exercise microtrauma to muscles and tendons. Reduced muscle and tendon strength can result. So when a client is doing some type of exercise, we're creating microtraumas, especially with like a workout. That's what we're doing. We're trying to break those tissues down so that they can be rebuilt and renewed stronger. But when we see that someone is doing some type of excessive energy expenditure without having enough fuel to do so, that they're creating some of these problems that don't allow that rebuilding to happen. Some of the worst advice out there is just this whole burn more calories than you consume rule out there. It's a horrible piece of advice. We're telling a person to burn more resources than you have available so that the body will burn stored fat for fuel. But that's not really how the body always works. There are some activities that a body can't really use stored fat to do those things efficiently. And for some states in the body, it makes it impossible for the body to access that stored fat. So we really need to help clients learn how to work with their body instead of against it when they're trying to optimize performance. So the study goes on to say a reduction in anabolic hormones can affect muscle development and tendon repair. And they say that hormonal dysfunction is a hallmark of these lower energy availabilities. Anabolic hormones such as insulin and insulin-like growth factor are reduced. This results in reduced glycogen and protein synthesis and impaired repair of muscle microtrauma post-exercise. Cortisol levels are also elevated in LEA, promoting a catabolic state that causes proteolysis of muscle tissue. Lower insulin levels also accelerate the breakdown of muscle proteins to sustain blood glucose. These effects can be detrimental to the muscle strength and performance. So what it's saying is that when there's not enough resources for the body to do what you're trying to get it to do, the body's going to say, well, yeah, I'm going to get those resources anyway. And the place that it gets it from is us. It breaks down our own body to get the resources that it needs when there's not enough resources coming in. So this can be a big problem. Not only are these studies showing that it pushes the body into this more catabolic state, but it also can be getting the body to break down tissues. And if we're breaking down tissues, that's making those structures weaker. And just remember, this study was talking about that it pushes more of these catabolic hormones. And the catabolic state is where our body should be during the day. That's when we're very good at creating energy and kind of keeping us going all day. But then at night, we're supposed to move into this anabolic state where the body's good at resting and rebuilding and repairing. So if these things that we're doing with this energy expenditure is pushing our body more into that catabolic state, that can be a big problem when it comes to rebuilding and repairing tissues. So when we're looking at these issues of this structural weakness, we have to consider are resources too low, but we also have to consider, does the body have a lack of building blocks? So the body uses amino acids to rebuild a lot of these structures that get broken down, or they have these micro traumas that happen during a workout or some type of sporting activity. So the body really needs those building blocks to rebuild and repair. So let's look at this study here that talks about use of proton pump inhibitors is associated with fractures in young adults. And they say that PPI use was associated with fracture in young adults, but overall evidence did not support a PPI fracture relationship in children. But young adults who use PPIs should be cautioned regarding potentially increased risk of fracture even if they lack traditional fracture risk factors. So a PPI is just like an acid reflux medication that's used to turn off stomach acid so that that acid doesn't come back up and create that reflux symptom. But the study is showing here that overextensive use of these PPIs has the ability to make weakness in bones. And that makes sense when you understand how the human body works. You know, this digestive thing is kind of a big deal. If we don't have amino acids, it's usually because the person can't break protein down into the amino acids. So when we eat food like protein, that stomach makes this hydrochloric acid, this stomach acid, to help us acidify that food so that we can break it down and get all the nutrients out of that food. So we're seeing with these studies, when we turn off that stomach acid, now the body doesn't have these amino acid building blocks to rebuild structures like bones. Bones are kind of a big deal for us. But we also know that when it doesn't have the amino acids it needs, it'll break down other tissues to access those amino acids as well. So the study is showing these problems when someone's using PPIs, but what's important to understand is that a person doesn't need to be using a PPI to have low stomach acid. A lot of people have low stomach acid for a wide variety of reasons. Most people dealing with acid reflux are dealing with reflux because of a lack of stomach acid. It doesn't usually come from too much stomach acid like advertisers want us to believe. There's a valve at the bottom of the esophagus called the lower esophageal sphincter that opens so food can come in, and then it's supposed to close so everything doesn't come back up. The problem is that LES valve is triggered by stomach acid. So if someone isn't making enough stomach acid, now the small amount of acid that they have is going to come back up because that valve is not being triggered to close. So if a person has a lack of stomach acid and can't acidify protein correctly to turn that into amino acids, they're not going to have those building blocks that we talked about. And digestive malfunctions are very common, and when someone doesn't have enough resources, it is possible that a client might not be consuming enough. But in most cases, it's usually that they're eating okay, but they can't break those foods down, so now the body can't access the nutrients that it needs to run all these functions that these studies are talking about. So if you don't know how to help clients fix these malfunctions, if you're new here, then my book Health Pro Results, chapters 3 and 4, kind of walk you through helping clients figure out which aspects of digestion are not working correctly and what steps will help them correct those issues. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'll put a link in the description below so you can get that whole thing totally for free. And then you can just jump to chapters 3 and 4 and learn how to do those things with your clients, and that's totally going to change your whole business. And if you're a consumer that just happened upon this video because you like the topic, then I'll also put a link in the description below so you can download my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, totally for free too. And that walks you through those same steps. It's just more appropriate for consumers, where the other book is really written for health professionals. But let's look at this issue here, because we're talking about this lack of building blocks with an inability to digest proteins correctly. So when the person does these micro traumas, they need these building blocks so that they can create this healing process. So this study here on the training load and fatigue marker associations with injury and illness, they say previous research has demonstrated that training and competition stress result in temporary decreases in physical performance and significant levels of fatigue post-competition. These decreases are typically derived from increased muscle damage, impairment of the immune system, imbalances in anabolic-catabolic homeostasis, alterations in mood, and reductions in neuromuscular function. So they hit on something here with this anabolic-catabolic homeostasis that we really need to understand. And it was Dr. Emmanuel Rivisi who helped us understand that the body has this natural circadian rhythm that we were talking about at the cellular level. Well, during the day, we should be in this catabolic state where the body is very good at creating energy and keeping us going all day and also breaking down tissues. So a lot of these tissues and cells and all these things get broken down during the day in this catabolic state, whether a person is exercising or not. This is the part of how the body rebuilds and renews itself. And then at night, the body should move into this anabolic state where it's very good at sleeping and resting, but also rebuilding and repairing. And the problem is that a lot of people will get stuck in one of these states most of the time. They're not moving back and forth day to night like they really should. And if they're stuck in one of these states, it can create a wide variety of health issues. But we remember from these studies, they're showing us that a lot of this exercise, especially when there are not enough resources available for the body to sustain those types of exercises and work and such, that it pushes the body more into this catabolic state. Most workouts, most physical activity has a pro-catabolic effect on a person. So you can see this could be really problematic for a client if they're already leaning too far on this side. If a person is already stuck in this state most of the time, which can happen for a wide variety of reasons, but if they're stuck here and then they start doing all this training that's really going to magnify that, well, you can see it would be very hard to move into this state where the body can rebuild and repair. So now all of those structures are going to be weaker like we were talking about, and they're going to be more susceptible to damage when they're being stressed. So that book I told you how to get for free in the description below also walks you through helping clients understand if their physiology is leaning too far on that catabolic or anabolic side and steps you can take to correct those imbalances if that's going on. That could be a really big deal. If someone's really stuck in this state, if they can fix that imbalance, that may allow that client to train a little bit harder or a little bit more often successfully. So when we're looking at this, the timing can be important because, when we're breaking down a muscle, say somebody does like a chest workout and they break down those muscles a little bit so that it can be rebuilt and renewed stronger, but then they do that same chest workout the next day, well, they're not allowing the body to do this healing process that it needs to do. Those are not rebuilt and renewed, and now they're breaking them down again. So they're removing the benefits of that workout. And with a lot of sports, a client might be doing that activity every day, so you might need to really learn how to maximize some of these things to optimize the body to withstand that type of trauma. And if somebody's dealing with a catabolic imbalance, you can see that a lot of those things would really be magnified. So we have a lot of issues here. This is not a one plan is going to fix all your clients. Every client might have different things going on. A person's going to need to be able to bring in enough fuel so that the body has the fuel and it's not going to push into those catabolic states. It's not going to break down its own tissues to access resources to do what the person's trying to do. They need to have digestion working correctly so that they're accessing those resources in the food that they're eating. They need to be able to turn those into those building blocks so that the body can have the amino acids available to rebuild structures. And then they also need to be able to move into that anabolic state so they can do the rebuilding. So there's a lot that can go wrong, and some clients might have a little bit of more than one. Maybe they can digest okay, but they're not really getting as many amino acids as somebody else might be getting when they eat the same food. Maybe a person's a little bit in that catabolic state, but they are just not repairing as well as someone else. So we might have to look at a variety of things and work on different things to optimize situations for that client. But it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all. You're going to have to look at the client's physiology to get an idea of what steps are going to be appropriate for them. So I hope that helps, and if you need to dig further, you can get that book for free in the description below. And if you want to understand this catabolic imbalance a little bit more right now, you can jump over and check out our video on how to help a client fix a catabolic imbalance. I can't wait to hear about your results.